Is everybody comfortable? That's the reason for comfort break. Comfortable? Okay, good. So we will start into our work session agenda and turn it over to Jeff.
Okay, and the first topic for discussion is the long-range comprehensive plan draft contract that we've been negotiating with TPUDC, who is the primary contractor, and Natalie and Will are going to present that.
Find Lauren to pull that contract up for the audience's benefit. Thanks. All right. In your agenda packet that we provided last week, we did give you a copy of the draft contract that staff has been negotiating with Town Planning and Urban Design Collaborative, which is the consulting firm that the council selected to facilitate the long-range comprehensive plan process. We've had a couple of phone calls with the consultant, myself, Jeff, and Will, and we have gone through the provisions that are included. I tried to get a much better understanding of what their process was. Every consultant's process is slightly different, so we wanted to make sure that we had a good understanding of that. And to that end, I also prepared a timeline. And Will, if you wouldn't mind, would you give one of those to each council member and the manager? I provided you that timeline via email earlier today, but I did print a copy for you today just in case you didn't have an opportunity to print that. And this timeline I put together primarily just to help us have a good one-page snapshot view of the proposed process. Thank you. All right. And I also wanted to point out that I did pass the contract on to our village attorney and had him review it. He did have a few comments, and I have inserted his comments in here as well. They were fairly minor, and so we have taken care of that, and we have received our attorney's blessing on the contract that's before
Wonderful,
you.
wonderful.
Okay. And with that, I guess what I'd like to do, I think what might be most helpful is for me to just go through the timeline that you have and provide you as well as the audience a general overview of the process that the consultant has proposed, and then I can answer or address any questions or specific comments that you may have as it relates to the individual contract. Is that okay? Okay. All right, and the timeline that I passed out here and what's outlined in the contract does correlate with.
Is there a copy of that that can be projected?
It is on the admin drive if you want to pull it. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't prepare for that. Comp plan, LUP, and it's in all caps at the bottom. Hit date modified sort. There you go, that PDF. Thank you, Lauren. Okay. So the contract, they have broken it down into 3 separate phases. The first being project coordination, and this was kind of added after the fact, and it's just to list certain tasks that need to be handled kind of up front, if you will, before we really get into the meat of the early investigative stage. The timeline that I have drafted here corresponds fairly closely to the timeline that was identified in the consultant's proposal. When they provided you the proposal, you may recall they had a timeline in the back and they outlined their plan. And so essentially this timeline is a little more of a detailed breakdown of the same timeline with a different start date. Okay, so there's not been much change to the overall timeline in terms of total time. So what we're looking at, and the timeline has been drafted under the assumption that We would be able to get your feedback today or tonight, and we would be able to go back to the consultant, incorporate everyone's feedback, comments, and questions, and be able to bring a contract to you at your meeting in 2 more weeks. So it assumes that the start date of the project would actually be April 1st.
Okay.
Okay? So you can see in red there, we've got council approving the contract at the end of March, and then all of the baseline information, exchange of information, establishing what the consultant refers to as the think tank, and we can talk a little bit more about that shortly. Doing that in the first 2 months, really passing information, educating them, getting the consultant up to speed on the village. They'll be reviewing, bike ped plans, recreation master plans, all of our significant planning documents. They'll be doing all of that review during those first 2 months. Then you'll see in the early investigation phase, we'll jump to the community client kickoff meeting. And so this is the first time that the consultant will come on site. They will be here in Pinehurst, and they will, for the first day, I think this is a 2-day event if I recall correctly, they will meet with individual council members, other individual appointed officials. They'll meet with department heads, they'll meet with staff, and it's really, we'll do a tour of the village, we'll drive them around town, we'll look at different space needs for them and their future upcoming visits. We'll do those kinds of things and really gonna get them oriented, and that'll be kind of like our staff kickoff. They'll conclude that period there and I have it slated for June. It could be May, it could be July, but it's just where it is tentatively now. Then at the end of that, they will host a community kickoff. So this will be the first time that there's a public meeting that the community's involved in and invited to, and it will be kind of like the kickoff to start the process, the comp plan process, if you will.
Natalie, this is a very small thing, but I have June 3rd and 4th. June 3rd is a Sunday, and I have a trip where I'm returning home on Sunday, so.
Okay.
Is there a plan to work on
I
Sunday?
apologize.
Okay,
I
it's
should
probably-
have told you how to read this. It's the 3rd or 4th week in June.
Oh,
It's
okay.
the week number.
Okay, these
Yep.
are the weeks.
It's the week number. And I do want to say that this is my first attempt at a detailed breakdown, just to help you understand what the overall process is. The consultant has not reviewed this. I based it off of what they did provide me in a much more summarized format, but they have not reviewed this detailed breakdown. And meetings are going to be subject to your schedules, their schedules, et cetera. Is that helpful? But thank you, Nancy, for
Yes,
clarifying.
weeks, okay, not days.
And Natalie, I think it's worth talking about what the think tank is, because you're going to keep referencing.
Okay, I can do that. So the think tank is a concept that they have, that our consultant has, as a way to generate ideas and get input from members of the community. It's actually not really to get input. It's really to bounce ideas off of. So if the consultant hears from the community, there's a preference for A over B, they will talk to the think tank committee about that, and they'd ask the think tank committee to, use their best judgment in terms of guiding the consultant in terms of maybe what is the best way to handle those 2 different options in the plan, if you will. The think tank committee is not a traditional steering committee that's guiding the process. The project management for the comprehensive long-range plan from a staff side will fall to me. So I will do the scheduling, the making sure the meetings are set up and the facilities are located, making sure that the consultant's staying on track and on schedule as planned. But that the think tank is really to be that group of innovators, kind of, if you will, and those who don't really have a strong preference or opinion one way or the other, that are going to be open to alternatives and open to hearing suggestions that others may provide. Our hope and intent is that we would recommend, I guess, to you an application process for members of the public who may want to participate on that think tank committee. The consultant said as soon as we're under contract, they'll provide us with documentation about think tank committee responsibilities and what those members, could expect in terms of expectations of that the consultant may have of them. So, does that help? Is that helpful? Okay. So, in June, I'm projecting late June we'll do that. We'll do the kickoff meeting to the community, and then they will move forward with launching all of the outreach plan. And again, getting into more detailed existing conditions review. This is where they're going to start really digging into the data, the traffic data, the demographic data, the market and economic analysis. They're going to start digging into the heavy stuff kind of here. Then it looks like in the early fall, August, September timeframe, is when we would do the community visioning sessions. And the community visioning sessions will be those forums where all members of the community would be invited to come share with the consultants and the group what their desired vision or aspirations for the community are. So they will have the visioning sessions there in August, September, and then we'll begin moving into phase 2. So phase 2 is where we're doing the actual development of the plan. So Engagement HQ is a website. You can see that task 2.1 to 2.2 is an engagement site where we will have a dedicated website devoted to the comprehensive planning process. It will host, similar to how DOT has project websites for their projects, it would be a similar concept to that, where we would put all of the maps, all of the visuals, all of the data, information that's used to support those things, and host all of that there. We would also use that website as a way to provide residents an opportunity to give input. If, say, for example, they're unable to attend one of the public input meetings, we would have an option where they would be able to provide their input electronically. So we'll launch all of that. And then the scenario planning, you may recall during the interviews with the consultants, they have an innovative solution called Community Viz that allows us to do scenario planning based on different growth models and over an area, several different areas. So the scenario planning will occur there in the plan development stage. And then the big part of the planning process and the public input process is going to occur during the Planapalooza 5-day charrette. And based on my discussions with them, their plans for this is to come in on, let's say, a Wednesday or a Thursday. They've requested several thousand square feet of studio space. And by studio space, I mean they will have all of their consulting team here, and based on the input that's received during the charrette process, they will do the designs, the illustrations of potential alternative scenarios. They will do all of that in-house in an open design studio that the public is welcome to come in and out of as they please. And so that's what the Planapalooza is, an open design studio. They will have, at the beginning of that, a kickoff session at the beginning of the Planapalooza event. And then they will hold that event over the course of a weekend. So those folks who are working who may want to be able to come in on a Saturday or Sunday will have that option available to them as well. Then at the end of the 5-day charrette, they will have a closing session to the public. They will present out what the outcome was of the 5-day charrette process. And then they'll also have a client meeting with us and the think tank to say, okay, think tank, here's what we heard, here's what we saw, here are the illustrations, here are the things that we came up with, here are the planned strategies that we might recommend as a result of that. That will happen in the fall. So September is what we're targeting right now for the timing of that. Then the consultant will go back and prepare the draft plan. They will draft all of the text. They will refine illustrations and do infographics and get things pulled together. They will then, as you can see in the 2019 calendar, we expect that in the month of March or somewhere around in there, we would have in our possession the text copy for the plan document. We will have decided, in that interim, what the layout's going to be, how the plan will be organized, what the major themes and categories are. All of that will have been done by the end of Planapalooza timeframe. We'll review the text of the document. We'll have 30 days to do that. We'll pull everyone's comments together. We'll resubmit that back to the consultant. They will then draft the final, what they call the final pre-public draft of the plan. So they'll insert and make it look pretty so that they're going to present to us and then give us one more opportunity to review the full completed draft document before it goes public, and they will present that at the community open house in task 3.3. So they'll present it to the community. The community will again have one more opportunity to, this will be another check-in with them to say, this is what we heard during the visioning sessions, this is what we heard during the Planapalooza, did we get it right? The community will have opportunity to give feedback then. That will then be the final round of changes, and then there will be a joint council and planning and zoning meeting where they will come and present the plan to those, to you and that board. And then once you have approved and everything's finalized, we'll do a file exchange and we'll have electronic copies of all the information that we need. That's the comp plan contract in summary.
That's a good summary. Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay. What questions does anyone have?
My question are the one-offs. I mean, I think the mayor said it best. We had a lot of things we put in that bucket, areas of focus, and how do we prioritize, and how do we navigate the one-off areas of focus? That's where everything is pretty clear to me except that.
Except for that, okay. So what I would suggest is when we give our feedback to the consultant after this meeting, I will ask them what they may recommend as a good strategy to make sure that we're addressing certain specific topics like sidewalks and other specific topics that we talked about in the retreat. That's what you're referring to, right?
I was thinking that there would be a lot of things we'd want to put on area focus and only a few would win. That's the way I
Okay.
looked at it. And I always thought there might be a process for us to discuss those area
Okay.
focus.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
what I guess what I'm saying.
I
Yeah.
think there will be at least,
Yeah.
council will have that opportunity for sure, ahead of time.
And how's that handled in the contract if it's beyond the scope? That's what I guess.
I think what I would suggest is if there are specific things that you want to talk about, that you want the consultant to address, maybe talk about that at your next work session.
Okay.
And get that solid list. So when we're preparing for that initial client meeting, when they come here, they have that information in advance and they can give some thought to how they want to handle that during the Planapalooza event. So
Well, isn't there like a couple included areas of focus in the contract? Did I
Yeah,
specific-
I'm sort of scratching my head that, I mean, I don't know what's in or out right now. Right now, everything's in, from where I'm sitting.
Everything's in, yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know how, I'm not sure what you were thinking of, were things that are one-offs.
I thought that there was agreement that they would have some special interest districts and areas of focus.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
talking about small area plans.
Small area
I
plans.
think that's
I
what you're referring
apologize.
to.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't have the
thought-
terminology like I should. I was concerned about the prioritization
Yes.
of the small area plans.
Yes.
I called it small areas of focus, that's all.
Yep, I know what you're referring to now. We did talk, Jeff and I did talk with them about Rattlesnake Trail Corridor as a small area plan area. And based on our discussions with them, we felt like that was inclusive. What we were looking for would be inclusive in the current plan, and it's included. No additional costs for that. The only other small area plan we talked about was potentially Pinehurst South and maybe outside in the ETJ. Those were the other two areas that council discussed.
What about the, not Nucor,
Village Place.
Village
Village
Place?
Place.
Is that not included?
It's kind of all in there together, I think.
What do you call Pinehurst South? Just so I know.
Pinehurst South.
But like, give me a street or two.
Oh, it's
I'll
where
take
the-
a vowel.
where the
What do you
post
call,
office
I'm
is.
sorry. Oh, the post office, Blake Boulevard.
Okay.
Over there.
Okay. Sorry.
Sorry, too.
Terminology issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's make sure we're communicating clearly, please. Yes, but that, and Jeff, if you recollect something different, but I think that what we talked about was, when we were talking small area plans, the new core master plan that we have right now is a detailed small area plan. And what I had envisioned or thought that I understood was that we weren't looking for detailed economic analysis on the Rattlesnake Trail corridor or Pinehurst South or those other areas. So based on that premise, I think you will see that they'll be able to provide you a general area plan. And then if you want to get more specific, we can certainly engage them to do that or do that afterwards.
There's an existing plan, so updating it is a lot easier than creating something from scratch.
For Village Place, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do we need to call those out in this contract? Because we don't.
I don't think that we do, based on the example contracts that I've seen from them and how they've handled it in their previous,
Let's
their
have the
previous
discussion
plans,
with them,
but we
though.
can ask
I
them.
think whether it's
if you
spelled on
want.
the contract or not specifically, I think we need to nail down and have an agreement with them on what.
And that's what I was talking about. So
Yeah.
Judy said it better.
Do we need to specify specific areas for area, maybe a little more detailed area
Yeah, I
planning?
mean, we might say we could have 4 or, and give illustrative names, because at the end of the day, we could say, we want 3, and there are none of those names, but, you know.
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
I think a lot of those things are going to come out in the alternative growth scenarios and in the Planapalooza. Because
They will.
what else are we going to talk about in those?
Okay, I got a couple things. In our contract, under task 1.9, it's called review background documents, and it says consultant review the following documents. There's 2 omissions that we talked about, and I brought copies of them with me. First one is I thought we needed to provide them a copy of the 2018 Moore County Comprehensive Transportation Plan. I think that needs to be added. And the second one is the Moore County 2020 Strategic Action Plan for Economic Development. Now, all my fumbling and noise a little bit just a few minutes ago was the last thing we quote here is all other associated documents identified in the client's request for a proposal. I went through the request for proposal. I didn't see anything that they had requested. And I thought that was my fumbling. It was in the three other proposals that came back, and I also fumbled through the slide presentation that they made, and I didn't see them there. So.
Yeah, I think that's referencing the documents that we provided in our request for proposal. And I think both those documents are included in that. Is that not correct, Natalie?
Not included in the contract.
No, but we provided it to them to
Our
all of
RFP.
the potential
They already have.
folks that were competing as part of our request for proposal.
So they already have the
Have
document.
it already.
Yeah.
So let's cross our i's and
I'm going to make sure.
cross our t's and dot our i's. And
Cross our eyes.
I
cross
think
our
he's
eyes
saying
too.
list all the relevant documents. That's
I'll
what,
list them
and I
out
think
specifically.
that makes some sense.
And the
So
other,
one thing we did, John, if you don't mind, for the planning documents, when we did the request for proposal, we uploaded those to our website and made sure we had a link to them. So I'll need to make sure that I have electronic links to the two documents that you've identified.
and just for clarity, one of the things for me is this, I keep calling it a long-range or a land use plan. So just like think tank is a new terminology, I'm assuming that when we get to task 2.7.5, it's in their request for proposal, it says conservation and growth framework. And they say traditionally referred to as a future land use map, our approach creates a conservation and growth map which focuses on community character rather than, quote, use, unquote, as a defining organizational feature of different parts of the community. So what I'm looking for is a land use plan, but it's going to be, now we're going to call it a conservation and growth framework. Same thing.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
other
you.
questions, comments for Natalie?
I shared several pages of things with Natalie earlier today. I'll just make a comment about this contract. I found it incredibly precise in the oddest of ways. That we could have 24 meetings, of these, the client teams over a 17-month span. That doesn't really seem like a lot to me. And on the flip side of that, what if we only have 20? Do we get a credit? So I thought there were some oddities in how things were spec'd in this contract that made me think of working with Accenture in the past, but even Accenture, I think, was clearer than these guys are in some of these. I don't know.
Who was clearer?
A company called Accenture, a big consulting firm.
We have a contract with them?
No, in my past experience.
Oh, in your past
And
experience?
using it, I mean, they were really rigid and tedious in their contracting, well-known.
I think I would echo the same thing, Judy, in my experience, and two companies that I worked with. And although what I'm glad to hear is that Mike Newman has reviewed this, and from a city contract, it was all right. But there are some there's a lot of specificity in here about numbers and numbers, but.
Yeah, I mean, and also I thought another thing that was odd was use of the documents on page 4, that I get that this is their IP and their know-how to make this happen, but I really feel like the original documents belong to us. I mean, this is our body of work that we're paying for. They're helping us create it, but I don't know, that seems like it should come to us rather than being retained by them, which is what they're saying. So, anyway.
I have that to talk with them about, Judy. Yeah, Judy did give me a couple of comments, and I have those already ready to go with the consultant when we give them a call tomorrow.
Did you change like the scope of services which they presented to us? Is there any changes in that?
Than originally
Than
presented?
originally, yeah.
Or what you got? We made several rounds.
In their presentation.
I'm saying from the presentation to the.
Yes, there was one significant change
Can
in
you
the scope of services.
enlighten me on that?
That is, I will refer you to task 3.2A on page 16. So when they originally presented the scope of services to us, they were only going to present us with the Microsoft Word text of the plan document before we would have an opportunity to review just the text, and then they would reveal the final plan with pictures and graphics and everything else. And
Good catch.
I said, I think we need to review that first. That's the only change.
Yeah. Yeah, we picked them for a reason. We liked what they gave us, so I didn't think there'd be much changes, but that's a good change. Thanks.
That was the only change. And it did result in them proposing a slightly higher fee than what was in the original proposal
How much
to
higher?
accommodate for that. So the proposal was $184,930,
So it's up 10,000.
about 10,000, yes, ma'am. They anticipate that we may have some changes that they would need to make.
I mean, that's the other thing in this contract, that there are a lot of narrow rounds of edits that we could offer. And again, I think that's really cutting it really tight on how quickly, on how many rounds you can have, and then that's it. And then now you're into additional charges. This whole thing is one big fat iterative process, one right after the other. And so I'm just concerned that they put these gates up, 3 rounds for this and 2 rounds for that and 1 round for that. And I think it'd be worth a call to some of these other customers of theirs to see, do they hold your feet to the fire on that throughout? Or how does that flow with them?
I think, if I try to look at this from their perspective, I think that those things are enumerated because those are the things that cost them money.
I get that.
Yeah, so the contractual arrangement, I mean, it's about what they're going to provide for us. And it doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity for more of any one of those things, but what they're telling us is they would prefer our cooperation in being efficient toward trying to get the project done to our satisfaction within those parameters. But if we need more, it's going to cost more.
But I also thought they brought an important point about the process needed to fit into a timeline. So there's a trade-off if it lasts too long. So I thought 17 months is a pretty strong, long process.
Yeah, I told Judy this on the telephone this morning, that if you look at the timeline, it's not, it's actually a fairly good timeline in terms of if, maybe a week or 2 here either way. But, if we do the kickoff meeting and the community meeting, like in June, maybe before school's out or right when school, kind of like kicking off the summer kind of a thing. And then you see the community visioning sessions, if those can happen, like right when school's starting back, that's a good fit. Then Planapalooza, either September, October, right when things are, still hopping around here. And then coming back and doing the community open house before the end of school next year. And timeline-wise, we will have, a good idea of what some of the key strategies are going to be recommended, so we can maybe even get those in the CIP and the budget cycle a year sooner than we thought we might be able to. So, yeah, I think overall the timing's good, and it's gonna be a hard push, but I think it's good.
So one of the extended times to me was the 2.6, 2.7, at the last line on 2018. Consultant prepares the draft plan. 5 months to do that work. That seems like a lot.
It may only be
Might
4. I
be.
mean, this was my best guess, so I would not hold the
Right.
consultant.
You're right. This is your
So the-
straw man
yeah.
based on their straw man.
It is, my best guess.
Yeah.
So, I do, it is holidays. It's
They take the
November.
winter off.
It's going to slow down during Thanksgiving and Christmas for sure, but, we'll just kind of wait and see what they have to say about this. So I'll pass
Yeah.
this along and try to, make sure that we have a fairly detailed timeline to help us stay on task and on schedule.
So your comment was that once we sign the contract, they'll tell us about how to recruit for what I'm going to call the leadership team.
Think tank.
The
yeah.
think tank group. And my only concern about that is getting that team in place and figuring out who those members are. And if we do an application process, how people to advertise it, make sure people want to participate. Kevin made a campaign pledge that more people would not be part of the plan than would be part of the plan. So, more people would be part of the plan than not part of the plan. So we got to get all these people lined up.
I honestly think the think tank concept puts more strength in community input, and I think it probably was the most exciting thing I heard from these guys because it took the emphasis. If you didn't get put on the think tank, your input is still magnified through the process. So I think it's holding true to my campaign promise. So I think there's, if someone doesn't contribute input, I think it's because they didn't want to, right? Don't you think so? And
They're going to have ample opportunity.
So I hope everybody chooses to.
I think Judy does make a good point in that I think establishment of the think tank, understanding what the roles and responsibilities of that group are, and getting an application process set up and in place is going to be probably number one on the list to get that going first thing.
How about taking for action what the way ahead is for the think tank? Kind of put a date on the wall. Think about how many people we would like to have in this think tank, what kind of backgrounds we'd like to have. I think that's something that we can do, ought to be able to do right away.
I think we need to. And, their contract says only 8 people are in the
They have
think tank.
specified 8.
Which I think is way too thin.
I think
Way
it's too
thin.
small. I think it's too small as well.
So 8 was their recommendation. Is there another number that council would prefer?
How about if you come back and make a recommendation to us as to what you think? Come back with a date, come back with a roles and responsibilities for the think tank, what the composition, what the size should be,
Well-
and maybe some ideas on backgrounds of the individuals who would be. We'd like to the diversity in the folks who would be on the committee.
If I'm looking at this correctly, John, once we sign the contract, end of March, there are 2 whole months for us to establish a think tank.
Correct.
So, but they have information they want to give us about applications, and that's their information. They don't want to give us that before we sign a contract. But it's probably one of the first things we should ask
Yes.
for.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and then we've got 2 months to establish it.
But I think also part of that, Natalie, is who decides. Are they deciding who the composition is, or are we?
Oh, they can't decide.
No, I think it's.
They don't know these
I think it's our decision. That's why I kind of think we ought to be moving out on this.
Yeah.
And we could certainly get their input, but it's our contract, and we're going to tell them we're telling them what to do, and they're going to say, here's how we're going to do it.
How many people do you think, in addition to 8, are needed? Just, as long as they show that there's some flexibility on the number.
There is. Jeff and I talked to them about this in, I think, our very first call. And Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but my recollection was, I brought it up because I anticipated that you may feel that way. And he said 8 is their recommendation, but certainly if council would prefer more, that they would, work with that. And if
Accommodate your desires.
They will
I-
accommodate your
I think
desires.
I thought I saw another suggestion, rather than saying 8 in this thing, it said 8 to 12. or
8 to
maybe some
12 is what I was thinking.
Maybe a way to tackle this is rather than pin down a specific number, we could go back with a range of sizes that we might be happy with and that they might also be happy with. And
I think 8 to 12 is certainly somewhere in between there is a good number.
Yeah, the smaller it is, the more vulnerable you are if somebody can't participate for good reasons.
Doesn't participate,
And all of
yeah.
us will have some good reason at some time. So, you just want to keep your core group big enough and strong enough, I think.
Honestly, if there's 12, there might only be 8 or 9 at some
Well-
meetings, 10 meetings, so 12 might end up with a net
Okay.
result anyway of 10
Right,
yeah,
right,
at-
yeah.
at that meeting, unfortunately.
All right, so I think I'm hearing 8 to 12 is okay if we
Right.
do that? Okay.
Say a squishy 8 to 12.
That's squishy. Squishy, I like that.
Okay, what else do we have to discuss on the contract and the timeline?
I mean, this is a nit, but, their community viz model, they talk about, that we can have renewal to that. We do just need if that's a renewal at no charge, that's terrific. If there's a charge to it, we ought to know what the charge is, so we can
Charge to
plan for
what?
it.
I'm sorry, I didn't
The
understand.
software that they give you with that community viz.
I
I
thought
think
they
that's
said
just
they'd
a
give it to
benefit.
us.
We can use it or not use it, so I don't think that's part of the contract.
No,
They're just
no.
saying they're going to give us the software.
I get that, but if you
Yeah.
want to renew it, there's a charge. I'm just saying, let's know what the
Just know what
charge
the
is.
charge is.
No, I heard Nancy negotiate a good deal on ongoing use. Did you remember that?
Yeah,
I recall
We
it.
need, we
They
need
have it
to,
on
we need to
video.
remind them on video that
that's right.
we negotiated in case we wanted to use it.
I think I can give you a good deal on it.
So, I mean, that's a good point too, in that they have included in here a provision that we would be able to acquire, we would have a copy of that software and be able to use it for future scenario planning after the comp plan's done, so.
It was
I
an
think
added benefit. They
it's an
threw it in.
added
It's not,
benefit.
I don't think continuing use of community viz is part of this contract. It's,
But they
we can take it or leave it after they're done with their work.
I heard a good deal, a better than average deal,
I did too.
and I want to hold them to it.
I'll run the tape.
Oh, was that on the
on the
annual?
videotape.
Was that on the annual?
I think it may have been.
Yeah, well, what happened was, it was kind of
Upgrade charge or-
kind of a joke.
Or
and
was
he
that just to
said-
give it to us?
He said if you give us the business, we could negotiate on that. That's what I heard. Remember that?
Yeah,
I thought that was on keeping the software, though.
Keeping the software.
right.
Yeah, but
Keeping the software.
they've said they're going to give it to us free.
Oh,
So
that's
we
great.
that's the best deal you can get for that.
I didn't know about that.
Good deal, yeah.
But it's the renewal that's
Yeah,
where the price may
It's the
come in.
updating, it's the annual maintenance.
yeah.
I need to just clarify,
Oh,
and I
okay.
can do that.
That's what we're.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
hopefully
we
we'll
got the deal, though.
think it's good.
Any other questions about the contract as it's presented?
Sure. Sure, Leo. Since you're the chairman of the planning board, why not?
I see there's 6 weeks afloat in there. Is that intentional, or what is that for?
Which 6 weeks are you talking about?
The blank weeks? There's no colors in it, it's white?
First 2 weeks in June,
That's about it.
June, no?
last week in
There's,
May of
end
2019.
of May,
July of 2019.
July, two in August. One in August. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
4,
4.
Right.
5,
and it-
6.
Yeah, I think it's
And
fair to go
they-
back and observe that Natalie developed this based off the information we had, and we got to go back and figure out if this actually fits what they intend
So-
specifically.
The consultants haven't seen this
They
yet?
have not seen
Okay.
this. No,
Yeah.
no.
All right.
No, they say, for example, they gave me the key dates of kickoff meeting, 1.1, community vision sessions, Planapalooza, and draft plan. So they gave me just 4 rough timelines for those 4 events, and then I kind of
So
tried
once-
to fill it in based on what I knew and what we had discussed on the telephone.
So once they see it, there may be some adjustments?
Oh, there will be.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I'm positive. This will not be the timeline. It's really just to get a good understanding of the
Okay.
flow of the work, not necessarily the exact months that it will occur in.
Thanks.
Thank you, Leo.
Good question, Leo. Thank you.
But on the approved agreement, we'll have the real dates, right?
Yes, so they have a separate timeline.
Okay, if there aren't any more comments, I think you've done a great
Great,
job.
thank you.
And glad to know that Mike is looking out for us, as he always does. And so we'll see a contract back maybe,
I hope so.
okay, in 2 weeks.
Next meeting.
Yes,
Okay,
that's
great.
the plan.
Great, that is fine.
Bring it to you for
That's great.
approval. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you very much. You've come at a good time, Will.
Heard that a lot.
Congratulations.
Hello?
Constant reminder.
Okay, next, we have we're discussing the use of Open Village Hall for public engagement.
While Natalie's getting herself situated there, shifting gears, as we look back over the last probably 8 or 10 months, maybe even longer, our use of Open Village Hall has dropped off dramatically.
It has, thank
And
you.
so we'd just like to engage you in a conversation about how we can pick that back up and have it be meaningful.
Okay, so what I have before you, what I've presented is just some historical information on our use of the Open Village Hall platform. And as you may know, we implemented Open Village Hall in fiscal year 2015. And as you can see from the information I provided, we posted 3 topics in 2015. We set a goal to post at least 12 topics, 1 a month, in 16 and 17, and we did okay in 16, but in 17 we fell short of that. And through February of this year, we have only posted 1 Open Village Hall topic. And so as we were going into budget and looking at, there's a cost associated with that tool, we wanted to get some direction from council in terms of your willingness and desire to continue to use this platform. And along those lines, as it turned out, we have 2 public meetings next week, which we as staff thought were very appropriate topics. And in fact, I've kind of taken the approach that if we have a public input meeting, we should provide the public that opportunity online through Open Village Hall if they're not able to attend. It's just a standard. It's just a standard practice. So as a result of that, we actually yesterday and today have uploaded 2 new topics for the public input meetings that I had listed there as potential. Not realizing the quick turnaround and timing of those, we actually went ahead and posted those in order to allow plenty of public notice for those meetings. So what we have here too is on the second page, what we do is we track subscribers who are viewing those topics, and then I just provided you an Excel list of the types of topics that we have provided in the past. As I mentioned there, we will do a topic we do every year for our strategic operating plan. We, as I mentioned, put a topic up yesterday for the community center input meeting that's next Thursday. And then today, a topic on the proposal or recommendation, if you will, to split the historic district. That was uploaded late this afternoon. So those 2 are out there, and we're proposing that we would also maybe want to consider the Moore County Comprehensive Transportation Plan public input meeting as a way to get some additional information. Tonight I heard Midland Road Corridor Study. I don't know if you want to put that information as a separate topic. So did I see some head nods on that one?
Yeah, I think
Yes.
so. I think,
Really, I just wanted you to have a chance to discuss, because since Kevin and Judy were elected, I don't know that this council's really talked a lot about how we've used Open Village Hall in the past, the benefits that we see from it, and really what our new council members' desires are to use it as well. So with that, I'll let council discuss.
what is really interesting is how many people view the topic, and then it really drops off to how many people actually comment on the topic or provide feedback. So people are kind of interested to look and see what people are saying, but then a much smaller number actually comment.
And it's an art to try developing
It is,
these
it
topics
is.
and trying to put just enough information out there that you're not overwhelming or it's too much. And then, of course, posing the right question.
Right, right. Yeah. What is the cost associated with it?
I was, Jason, do you remember off the top of your head? I think it's like 5,000 and some change. Yeah, 5,000.
Per year?
Per
That we
per
pay?
year.
Oh,
Per year.
That's not out of line.
But the concept is it's a social platform.
Right.
So you wouldn't post to your, a marketing firm would not suggest you post to your Facebook page once a month in order to generate interest or followers.
Right, yeah.
It's a similar
Got to
type.
keep it active in
You
order
have
to
to keep
make
it
use of
going.
it. Yeah.
You got to keep it going.
Yes.
and you have to have things people want to
Want to comment?
comment on.
Right, exactly.
There's a range of response rates here, or
Mm-hmm. There are.
click-throughs rather, yeah.
Just to dovetail into the consultant, their product's called, for engagement,
Engagement HQ.
we'll have an opportunity to see that in action
I've asked for a
I would
demo when
reserve
they first
judgment.
get here.
on Village Hall until we see that engagement product, see if it's, has any different type of engagement.
Features or,
Yeah, because we're going to see, we're going to have two parallel products working at the same time.
yeah, so that's why I asked, when we've had contract discussion calls, is I want to see what the Engagement HQ site looks like right up front, so we can make some decisions as to, does it make more sense to link the two and keep people, around Open Village Hall and make links back and forth, or is their site better than our, site kind of thing? So we have
Oh,
to
that in 90 days.
figure
maybe.
all that
Yeah.
out. But it's a good point. It's a really good point, Kevin.
Well, I look forward to the comments on these two, and then we can decide later when they present their public input platform.
Sounds good.
Well, I think your strategy to link this to any public hearing is a really good one, to give people another avenue to add their thoughts.
Okay?
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Everybody would be comfortable if we kind of made that, tried to make that almost automatic then, we would be a part of the process.
I think so.
I would think so.
Good, thank
Well,
you.
say for example, today, I mean, Lauren's involved too, Melissa, I mean, it's stuff gets blasted. So it goes out to e-news groups, it goes out on all of our social media, it goes to notification lists, it goes to NAC. I mean, we try to push it out as hard as we can. We typically get a lot of great feedback within the first week of posting a topic, so.
Hey, this is off topic, but before I forget, I wanted to say it. There's a great handout on the community center thing, but it doesn't say that it's drop in any time. I feel like it looks like you got to be there at 5 for a 5 to 8 presentation. And Jeff did
I'll
a
have her
good job. Jeff did a good job at the meeting, saying there was a drop in. But I just thought that maybe we need to make sure we engage. Come in anytime you want, because I don't know. I could misread this as you have to be there at 5 for a presentation.
Yeah, a drop-in or something,
yeah.
or,
Yeah,
You did it.
Changed
but
that,
I just
didn't we,
wanted the
Jeff?
Digital stuff.
that's good catch, thanks.
But we didn't change it on the flyer?
That's fine. Good.
Jeff just said, because he made that point to make sure that we clarified it was drop-in. So all the e-news and social media stuff that
Okay,
went out
great,
had it,
great.
but it may not be in that document. Okay,
Okay.
that's a good comment.
Okay, thank you, Natalie.
Thank you.
Next, we have that lot that we keep talking about in Dove Run.
All right, and Jeff's gone out and done some research on what the cost associated with doing a turnaround at the end of that street would be, and he's also done some research on the number of like situations there are out there in the community, and maybe that'll help you all formulate a decision on this.
Okay, revisiting Dove Run lot in Clarendon Gardens, the one with the basketball hoop at the end, for those who refer to it as that descriptive. We did, at the last council meeting, talk a little bit about this. At that time, council directed us to go back and find out about how much would it cost to build a cul-de-sac if we ever wanted to do that. And that, as you will recall, is really the primary value that we could find for the village if it wanted to accept the lot. Beyond that, it really didn't seem to have a lot of additional value to the village itself. So we went back and ran some numbers based on some pricing we have gotten very recently. So it's about a $20,000 price tag in today's dollars if you wanted to put a cul-de-sac at the end of that road. Whether we wanted to do that now or sometime in the future, obviously the dollars will change as a result of that. As Jeff mentioned, we did look around a little bit and try to identify kind of how many of these types of situations do we have in the village, and including this one, we identified that there are 10 that are within the village limits where we have a stub road that does not have a turnaround. Some of them are in situations where it really probably doesn't benefit us necessarily to have one in a great deal. And some are ones that we could develop if, we ever so desired. So, but that's about how many.
Or if the opportunity presented itself, because we
Yeah.
would have to have some sort of property donation, or we would have to purchase.
In some cases, we would. In some, I think we have our right-of-way width is wide enough in the situational way the homes are arranged that we can fit within the existing right-of-way to the end of the stub. So hopefully that, in your mind, if you can visualize how that would set up. But in other cases, Jeff, you are correct. It may necessitate the easement or donation of other property. So that's kind of the direction you guys had requested us to provide to you in terms of information for you to contemplate whether you want to accept the lot or not. So
Was there any contact with the adjoining property owners to see if they would want it?
I did not make any contact with those individuals.
I made contact with, I happen to know one, and I think their concern, it was, well, there might be one here. Is that what you're saying?
Not immediately adjacent, yeah.
But I guess their only concerns is like it could be a road put through there, and I just said that, don't worry about any of that, I think there's just a fear component, and other than that, I guess my issue is it should score as a priority before we did it. It's a matter of whether we receive the lot and let it score naturally in the future to do,
In my mind, that's kind of how I viewed it, is if we think there's value at some point in the future for a turnaround at the end of that road for emergency vehicles, we think that's a good thing to have, then the lot provides us the opportunity to do that. If that's not, what we foresee, I don't really see any additional value to the village in owning the lot.
So Jeff, you said you found 10 other situations where there were stub roads and no turnaround, but there wasn't like an empty lot at the end that could be donated, was there?
Let's try to explain this without getting too deep here. In one case, we own some property at the end of the road, so we could do it, but it would necessitate us taking up some property that we're currently utilizing. So Spur Road, for example, behind Public Services, is a stub out. But we have the opportunity to turn in and turn around there by virtue of the rear parking lot.
Yeah.
One of the stubs is another one within Clarendon Gardens. It's called Horse Creek Run, I believe. And that is a road that is actually platted in order to have a cul-de-sac in it, and the right-of-way is existing. And there are 3 buildable lots at the end of the cul-de-sac. However, the road stops short of the cul-de-sac. In that case, if whoever bought one of those 3 lots would be required to put the road in, or if individual bought 3 lots and tried to develop, they would be required to put the road in, because you can't build on a lot that does not have an approved road presence
Right.
face on the PDO. So the rest of those, to the best of my knowledge, we would have to try to back the end of the road backwards, down a little bit in order to create the bulb within the existing right-of-way. In some of those cases, it doesn't benefit us to do it. There's no houses or lots at the end of the road. And I think of Gun Club is that way. If you go down Gun Club Road and you go to the left at the little fork instead of the right where Spring Lake goes, that road goes in dead ends. And then I think it's Curtis Lane or Curtis Circle or whatever comes off of there. Well, where that stops at dead ends, it stubs just like it does at Dove Run. But there are no buildable lots. The property where it dead ends is owned by the resort. And it's a short distance to back up into the cul-de-sac. It's only one lot width. So you back up and so the turnaround there, we've got an opportunity for a turnaround.
There's a couple of
That's in
those
it.
in Pinedales as well, right?
And there's some,
Butt up
yeah, there's
against number 6.
4 in Pinedale that all butt into number 6 and stop. Hilliard, McKinnon, I can't think of the other, McKeon, I think. Anyway, there's 4 of them, I believe, right there. All of them run into and dead into number 6 property line, if you will, or development line. So, again, in those cases, the way the homes are set up, there's really not a great deal of benefit to putting the cul-de-sacs at the end because you only have to come back basically one lot or so in order to make a turnaround to back into a side street and turn back around. In this case, we go down, I think there's maybe 4 houses or so. And from what I understand, our solid waste trucks are the ones that do it the most, and we send a smaller one into Clarendon Gardens anyway, but I think they back down that road. They stop, turn around up at the entrance or the intersection, and they just back down and then pull straight out. So,
I think in the past, we have taken lot donations when they benefited us for drainage, for example. And this lot doesn't have any of those benefits, and we're trying to find some benefit for it. And it just may not be worth even bothering with, so.
I think we'll need that $20,000 for the next item, so
Yeah, we do.
good that we pass on it.
okay, if that's a consensus of council.
What is
then-
your recommendation, Jeff? That's what I haven't heard that.
When we had the Give a Lot, Donate a Lot program,
Yeah.
the village was in the mindset of accepting as many lots as possible. You know, that philosophy at this point in time probably has changed. If, I would say to not accept it, if at some point in time we ever wanted to do a turnaround there, this lot's not buildable, it's not going to be built upon, it doesn't perk, there's always the opportunity to reapproach it. The owner at that point, and he'd be probably glad to get rid of it. I mean, he's paying taxes on it now, and he really doesn't have any benefit. Whether he doesn't live in state, so whether he ultimately abandons it and it just becomes foreclosed on or whatever, or, for tax purposes it gets sold, and nobody's going to have an interest in that either, so I don't know.
Okay. So do we have consensus that we just don't want this lot? There's no purpose for it?
No, I agree.
Okay. All right.
Half of it sits in the floodplain too, just as an FYI.
All right. I think you're up for the next item, too.
I am. If you'll recall, back in August, we had some conversations about the Pinehurst Brewery project and the need to manage stormwater through the Magnolia Road corridor, essentially from Dogwood Lane up there where Pinecrest Inn is, down to McCaskill Road. We already have a significant amount of drainage that flows through there. The brewery project is going to include a road dedication to the village, which will be basically facing the front entrance of the brewery. It's going to create some additional runoff. The brewery itself creates some additional runoff. And right now, all that water, once it gets past the brewery, it dives into private property essentially and dissipates in there. We felt like at some point in time that's going to have to be addressed. And the resort, as developers of the steam plant, had approached the village about would we consider a cost share on getting that water piped from basically the brewery location down to and under McCaskill Road where it naturally wants to get to anyway. At the time, prior to any designs, back in August, the engineers had placed an estimate of about $55,000 on that project, and we agreed to go in half, with the understanding that we would come back to council if that cost was significantly higher. Well, we found out last month that that cost was significantly higher, and the quote was $79,200. So we went back out and got a second quote on our own in hopes of getting something that was less expensive. But as it turned out, that was not the case. It did come in at a higher cost. So the low of the two quotes is $79,200. So the question is, do we continue to take the position that we would like to, we would agree to continue to split half of that $79,200 or some lesser amount? With the understanding, again, we previously agreed to do half, but at that time, we thought half would be $27,500 based on the engineering estimates.
I remember, was there a unique characteristic that wasn't understood in the first quote? Did I
It had
remember that?
not been designed. They did not know pipe sizes, didn't
Just
know
an
the
estimate.
quantity of boxes. They just made a,
So it was
educated
it was
guess.
different than what they thought is why the price is different, right?
same engineers, once it actually got designed to meet all the standards, and once they calculated all the flow that's coming in, that increases pipe sizes and those kinds of things, then also dealing with conflicts of other utilities and having to shift things here and there and go deeper, go shallower, all of those things combined.
So the cost change is explainable is what I'm trying to say, or isn't it?
Yes, it is from the standpoint of once the design was actually completed. I think basically what happened is the engineers underestimated at the time. Not necessarily through fault of their own, just with a lot of the unknowns that, you're basically running a linear foot of pipe, and that's going to cost X number of dollars, and you run that calculation. But then when you get into design and you say, well, I've got to drop down, I got to get under this water line, I've got to change that water line, that's got to now have be ductile iron going over top or under the pipe, all those
That's why
kinds of things.
I was just trying to parse this out as being unique, because I don't want to make a practice of this, but
No, of
this
course
looks
not.
unique, and it looks like they just underestimated, and then they got in it and they saw it was deeper, and to me, that's more acceptable than it's the
Yeah.
same job they quoted that's more.
It's not, it was not a quote by a contractor based on a drawn set of plans. It was the engineers who had yet to draw the plan saying, well, we think it's going to cost this, and that's what we brought forth in August. Once those were drawn out and the contractors put the, pricing to all the different materials and labor, et cetera, it came up to $79,200. We went back out and used another local contractor that we're very comfortable with and have used before in multiple occasions, and it typically has been very price competitive, and his price came in actually higher. So
Yeah, I saw that.
I think the price is what it is for that work that meets our engineering standards and could accommodate the amount of water flow that comes down Magnolia Road in totality. With some capacity for potentially, I think at the bottom of the hill, if there's some other additional development that is uphill in the EMS facility, we have the capacity that with the box on one side of the road that can carry that under McCaskill Road and deliver it into the ditch system.
Jeff, we have a good track record with the 79-100 contractor.
I can't answer that. I've not worked with that particular company. They are Progressive Contracting, I believe,
Correct, Progressive Contracting.
and I do not know who their sub is that would be in all likelihood doing the actual drainage project. I can only tell you the company that we have worked with that provided the $88,000 price, we would be extraordinarily comfortable with.
So we didn't put a cap on this when we agreed to this in August. We just said we'll take half.
Yes, unless the price came in more considerably higher, then
We
we
agreed
would
to
come back.
50% of $55,000.
And then we said we would come back if it's significantly higher, which obviously that became the case.
Significantly. So, I mean, I guess if we didn't say we would cap it and we agreed to half, then we agreed to half. But maybe at this time we can cap it. That we'll take half of the 79 and no more. And if it comes in above that in the final analysis.
Well, I think it's a matter of about $12,000.
Correct.
And there is definitely some benefit that we will get from this. Plus, we did, suggest to the resort we would get benefit, and so we would split it with them. And, not having any exact engineering, they guesstimated.
I think
So
it was an honest mistake. That's kind of how I explain it.
I would favor splitting the 79.2 with them.
I support that, but I don't mind adding the language Judy just said.
But this
We're
is,
capped
this
cap
is the
it.
math.
half of 79.2 regardless of whatever they run into. I mean,
Right.
it's not inconceivable they could run into a problem or two.
Is the brewery almost ready to make this connection? Or is in the construction timeframe, within a month or so is when the construction would be ready to make a hookup?
I don't know the answer to that, John.
I think they plan to open this summer.
They were planning to open this summer.
Oh,
And
they need to.
typically, I believe, when we do drainage, we start at the bottom and we work backwards. And so, based on that timeline, when you start to, by the time we reach the brewery area, we will be, a couple of weeks down the road either way. So it's probably getting close to the time where it's becoming important for them to move forward on that, I would
You
think.
feel comfortable with, what is it, I'm sorry, progressive contracting? Would you feel
I can-
comfortable awarding the contract to them?
I can only speak from not my personal experience, but with the building inspections department here in the village. And I have heard them, the chief building inspector, specifically say that they are a good contractor, and that in our TRC, our Technical Review Committee meetings each month, we get updates on where they are with that project. And he has spoken favorably about this particular contractor, and that they tend to be on the ball based on his observations.
Okay. Well, I'm going to propose that we go ahead and split the 79.2 with them. And,
I agree.
Agree.
okay, all right. Judy?
With the
Yeah.
cap
Okay,
Judy
we'll
mentioned.
cap it at that. And I think they'll probably be pretty happy that we have. Okay. The next item, I have been talking to the president of the Pinehurst Driving and Training Club. The next item is marketing the harness track. And Garth will be here on the 26th, Garth Henry, the dentist. No, the veterinarian who is the president of the Pinehurst Driving and Training Club. So would it be beneficial to put this on our work session on the 27th? Do we have a pretty packed meeting on the 27th?
The reason I want to move it is I didn't know that you'd move this quick. I just wanted it on the future agenda.
Right. Well, with Garth Henry being here,
Yeah, I'd
I
like to
think-
move it. I mean, I'm saying, this is kind of even too quick for me, and I asked it to be on the work session.
Right.
Well, I guess what we hoped to accomplish was to bring everybody up to speed on the previous deliberations that we've had on this and what the outcomes were and what the recommendations were, so that I think it would be helpful for everybody to understand it. Whether it happens tonight or it could wait till the next meeting, but
Review the past data, which is
Yeah.
incredible. I loved seeing this past data. I guess it was 2 different year reports, and so, I mean, we're worth going through that unless we're going to go through that when they're here. Are we?
What's the takeaway from these past reports?
Well, that'd be a good one for
that's
Mark
Mar-
to address,
that's-
right?
That's what Mark's prepared to talk about.
I think the takeaways for me are the 3, I think they're very limited takeaways. Says adjust the fees and charge policy to increase revenues. Second was operating expenditure reductions in the harness track budget, and then cost allocation corrections. In some previous work in working with part of Mark's team, what the thought was let's not be limited to horse opportunities. Certainly the stall rentals is very important. But what the team looked like, along with some others, said, let's look for other opportunities to market that area, still within the purview of the harness track, but let's look for other opportunities to come in. And we've spoken with some of the horse folks about jumping or dressage, and there was thought that we may have maxed ourselves out there. So that was part of the impetus of looking to see what else could come in where that venue could be used. So I think that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that without dramatically increasing fees, it's not possible for the harness track to be profitable on the back of the harness racing business alone.
I agree with that.
And to that degree, really the whole discussion of the harness racing aspect of this problem is secondary. It's what other things can we do to increase the summertime usage of the facility.
I think whether we wait for Garth to be here or not, like Jeff said, with standardbreds, those fees kind of are what they are. When we're full, our revenues are up. We had 256 horses here back in fiscal year 16, and we recovered 65% of our expenses in our operating with salaries and operating expenses. And now we have this year, we're down to 213 stalls. Now we have the same number of trainers that we had last year, but those trainers.
You actually have one more, don't you?
I did the math today, and it is actually the same. It's the same number of
Less
trainers
horses.
as last year.
Yeah.
We just have 39 less horses. So that translates into a loss in revenue of what we had from last year when we had actually 252 stalls last year that were rented. So, the difference in revenue is last year we had 281,000 and some change. This year we're projected to be 232,000 and some change. So, it's the different in stalls. Same number of trainers, just 39 less horses. So that's 1.77 horses per trainer. Now you can't have 0.77 of a horse, but and out of those 39 stalls, it breaks down to 6 trainers that have 35 less horses. So whether that's an industry issue or it's just those 6 trainers just happen to have less horses this year, we don't know. So I don't think we can overreact to 213 stalls this year. I think we do better off waiting to see what do we have next year.
Might it also be a delayed reaction to increasing stall rentals?
It could
Fees.
be. It could be. We the rates were. I'd have to look back through the study, but back when we did the 2015 study, our rates were
825. And we went to
and we're at
900.
927 now. Yeah, so we went to
Okay.
900 initially, and then we've only gone up one other time since then to 927. So it could be a delayed reaction to that. It could be that just owners are sending less horses down here because when they're here, they don't make money. They make money when they're up north racing or when they're in Florida racing. So here it's just an expense to them as well. There's only so much we can do on the standardbred side to generate revenues. I think the focus should be in the off season. When we can do those other types of events. We actually had money budgeted this year to look at a large fair exposition. We're not quite sure. Staff wasn't really totally comfortable with that idea down at the harness track. Is that what we want to do in Pinehurst or not?
With no shade or anything?
That's
you
right.
know?
If you think of the big, not state fair, but on a smaller scale, is that something we want to do in Pinehurst? We budgeted for it to start marketing this year. Then when we had our changeover with, the event coordinator position, we said, let's hold off on this and let's think about it a little bit more. But it might be something along those lines. Maybe it's a concert series. I think it really is that off-season time when we're looking to try to generate some additional revenues, because the reality is that the standardbred trainers pay their way for the most part when they're here. We cover those expenses for the most part during that time frame.
Yeah.
Now, the horse shows, just to touch real quick on something that was in the 2010 study, we built those show rings, with the hope that we were going to generate more shows. And initially we did. Our revenue jumped from, roughly 25 to 30,000 in that first year to 54,000 2 years later from horse shows. And we've steadily declined each year back to 25,000 in projected revenue this year for horse shows. So the horse shows have gone away.
How much do we aggressively pursue horse shows or additional standard breds?
Marketing.
Yeah, that's something that I think we have not done on the standardbred side especially. We've been full the last 2 years, so we have not pushed those ads as much as we could have.
But you have in previous years.
We have
But
in
we stopped
previous
because
years.
you were full, and this is the
Right.
first year he hasn't been
Yeah.
full, so.
That's right. We stopped because we were full. Hey, we're in good shape, so we need to continue doing
Well,
that.
it'd be nice, not nice, but it wouldn't hurt to have to turn some people away and
That's
say, well,
right.
maybe next year.
That's
Yeah.
correct. And
So
we
I
had that
think
case a few years ago.
aggressively marketing is a good thing.
When we had the Triple Crown winner and the Hamiltonian winner, we
They're
did
still here.
advertise.
They're still here,
And we did advertise after that, and we didn't pick up any trainers as a result. That doesn't
here
mean
right
that
now, yeah.
we kept doing it, but it was like, we didn't get anything.
My concern with marketing it during the off-season, which is in the summer, the heat of the summer, we don't even have Live After 5 in the heat of the summer because at night, people just don't want to come out and sweat. So I don't know what, in any event, other than, some huge
But that's the only
event.
way we're going to close the gap. We only have so many stalls that we can rent during the winter harness racing training season. And even when in 2016, I mean, we were just a couple stalls short of having every stall filled that winter, and we still came nowhere near covering all the expenses of the harness track. So the only way we're going to close that gap is to find other creative ways to use that facility in the off months, and that's.
I like to look at the harness track and the fair barn together because the fair barn has started actually making profit.
Right.
So if you look at them together, I think we're even, or are we? Close to?
Fair Barn has been right at 92%, John, the last couple years. If we factor in or don't factor in the sponsorships, the free events that we have down there, we actually, I think last year were 120% profit, 108, maybe not quite that high, 102, something like that. So we still wouldn't close that gap if we factored in the Fair Barn.
Well, I'm not sure that when a prior council, a long time ago, decided to buy the harness track, and when Joyce Franca gathered up all of those monies and people to restore the fair barn, I'm not sure we ever thought that they would pay their way. It is a piece of green space that.
Good decision.
It was a great decision.
Great decision.
I just learned that Kevin's family's been going out there to the
Well, the matinee races.
matinee races for years and years, and you have a spot under a tree. That's
Yeah.
pretty nice.
No, the impetus, I like where Jeff's going. The impetus for this was someone that talked about not seeing marketing for the standard breds, but I think the discussion should be shifted. I don't know why we can't have both discussions, like raise the standard bred, awareness with, I'd say PR more than
Well,
hard
I
advertising.
think we're in a position now where we need to.
Yeah.
We didn't fill our stalls, so even though we brought back
Yeah.
the same amount of trainers, we didn't fill our stalls. So now it's appropriate, certainly, to go out and recruit more trainers, so.
I found that letter from Mike
Did find it.
Cotter. I'll
Okay,
give that
good.
to you, and
Okay.
you can share it with everyone. It's
Great.
someone that talked about, Mike Carter talked about marketing, and it's kind of interesting. Standard breds go to 4 events. There's 4 major events, so you kind of know where they are. But I think you're right. I talked to some horse people. Thoroughbreds trainers have less horses. Standard bred trainers have less horses. I mean, there is a natural act. Can you tell me what percentage are empty and full? Where are we at? I'm trying to understand percentages right now.
In terms of
Stalls. I mean, just a guess is
Well,
good.
213 are full out of 260, so I don't have my phone up here to.
Okay, that's fine. I just was trying to, that's
Well,
the
my
opportunity.
understanding is you have
That's
3
about
empty
20%.
barns.
Yeah.
3 empty barns?
We have barns 16, 17, and 18 are empty.
Empty.
Yeah.
So there's 3 empty barns this year.
And I think the marketing might keep the present ones here as well as get new ones. So I don't think marketing's always about new business.
Put back in the budget for next year, or at least in the request right now, to possibly go back to that sale in November, which is the first week in November that we used to go to years ago, and to possibly attend the Little Brown Jug, which is something that we haven't done in a while as well. So to try to get our name back out there, and certainly our best marketing is always and will continue to be word of mouth from our
Yeah, our
trainers who are
existing
here.
people.
Your existing
That's why we
customers.
want to talk to them. What can?
Mark, when is that other event you're talking about?
The Little Brown Jug, that is typically in September.
I think we need to be out there earlier than that. If we're going to turn the corner by next season, we need to be hitting
Oh,
the
yeah.
racing circuit up north like in May and June.
Yeah, there may be other opportunities out there that we can try to get into. Now, it's this year's budget, so we'll have to look at that, but we can certainly see what's
That's what
available.
we could talk to your guy about when he comes.
Right, and we don't necessarily have to have him come to a meeting. Kevin, if you want to meet with him, maybe with Jeff and Mark, or I would come along, or some other council member. He's been doing this for a long time, and he owns similar training facilities in Canada. And so he's really a very valuable person to get to know and to understand the
Like you
business.
said, when he's in town for the matinees, we could set up a meeting
He'll
and
be in
just kind of talk
town,
through some of that.
Then there's the bigger opportunity Jeff's talking, it's much
26th.
bigger, and I like that discussion too. There's nothing wrong with having two.
Right, let's go out and market. But as far as events, I don't know.
Years ago, we had a concert promoter, I guess it was, Jeff, who did a series of concerts at the harness track, and
But you
they did
didn't-
okay for a while, but
But you didn't have Tufts Park then?
no, we didn't
And
have
you
that.
didn't
We
have
didn't
the
have the
stage.
arboretum. We didn't have
Well,
the
see,
stage.
those
all
are
of that,
are
so-
much nicer venues than going to a harness track for a
The
concert.
only good thing about the harness track for something like that is we can accommodate all of the parking on site, which we can't do in any. But that's it. That's the only benefit of it, so.
I just like talking about the harness track more. I just like it being on the agenda of the work session. It's just such a cool property. It's such an asset. I just want to engage about it. I'm not specific on what to do yet, but I
Well,
just,
let's set up a meeting with Garth when he gets here, because I think it'd be valuable for you to meet him, Kevin.
And the one thing to keep in mind too is that I'd like to keep in your minds with the harness track is if we think about Cannon Park and Wicker Park, the Arboretum, is those are green spaces that we spend, taxpayer money and
And they
significant
don't give
money
anything
that we
back.
don't give anything back, or we get some rental revenue,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it takes
Right.
money to upkeep those facilities as well.
Right.
So it's important to keep that in mind too. And
That's
both
ma-
of these studies touched on that as well a little bit, that there's a cost to maintain those facilities.
That's
So
right.
Mark, have we ever taken a look at the geographic dispersion of the trainers that actually come here?
in terms of where everybody's
They're from,
coming from
yeah.
specifically, I don't know that we have.
Let's do
really
that. I
studied
mean,
that. Okay.
Reality is, harness racing has a pretty large footprint, and if it turns out that it looks like we're getting a draw from just a small subset of that geographic, expanse, if you will, then it may suggest that we need to target our efforts in other areas.
I can't
Exactly.
tell you off the top of my head. I know that we hit Ohio, Indiana, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Canada. So we're pretty spread out, but
Yeah.
yeah, we can definitely.
In a
little
in a
tighter.
previous look at this, working with Ray Skellington and others, the horse community folks, professionals, we almost had set up where good discussion, not on harness racing, but on dressage and jumping. And there were some thoughts of horse owners coming from Florida who are going to be going north. They had ideas as well with respect to that kind of horse support. So I think if we want to look at harness track plus dressage or jumping plus other concert type opportunities, I think that's really the way to go. I think we just ought to open the aperture up here and see what all is there. I still have a list of who the folks were who at least I spoke with about a year and a half ago. So let me resurrect that list again in the effort of no stone unturned and open the aperture up. Let's see what we can come up with.
And there's definitely opportunities for additional shows as we've lost dates
And there were some thoughts from these horse owners about the prospect of what the market and what the industry was for jumpers as opposed to dressage. And I can't remember which one, but I thought it was dressage. They thought it was, or maybe, no, it wasn't, maybe it was jumpers. They thought that jumping opportunities would be more productive than dressage.
Okay.
I mean, the challenge with all of these things, and I've had some discussions with people about like Western barrel racing as well, but they're mature circuits, if you will. And if we're going to get the business, we're going to have to take it away from somewhere else
Got
because
to be an open date.
that's right. There's got to be an open date.
Gotta be an open date.
Yeah. That presents it's a barrier to entry in a lot of regards to all these things. So we're going to have to work hard on it if we're going to do it.
Yeah, it's like the dog show. I mean,
Yeah.
they found
Yeah.
a date and.
Better date, yeah.
And like they mentioned too with the AKC, sometimes you have restrictions on how close you can have a show to another show. So that plays into some of these challenges that some of the shows have had as well. So
Mark, one more question. What happened to the Annie Oakley Festival? Did St. Germain stop doing that?
they stopped doing that.
Okay.
So, that could be something that could be revived as well.
Yeah.
It would give a date booked. I don't really think we got any revenue out of that, but it would be another event booked if they
Yeah,
decided to,
Well,
renew that at some
we're
point.
looking at revenue, so. Okay, all right.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. The last item are the Brown NCDOT historical signs.
And staff's got nothing on this one. I think we were hoping that you and maybe Molly, if she was going to stick around, might share your ideas on.
Well,
Where to go
I
with
think
this?
I'm in a competitive mode, and all I see is Seagrove potteries this way, all over the county, and I don't see anything pointing to the historic village of Pinehurst.
I wonder if you have to pay for those signs.
Yeah, I think there's I've done enough research. I think it's a negotiating point. I think there's negotiation depending on the historic aspects. I think that it came up specifically, I think I brought it up in a long-term plan, Judy brought it up in the Women's Exchange, and there's like two applications. There's the historic village and the Women's Exchange. And then there's even blue signs that are tourism activity that I did some cursory research. I honestly just put it on a future agenda. I didn't know that I had that much pull, Jeff, that I could say, put it on a work session. It's on the next work session.
We all have that much.
I'll
But
have equal pool.
I really was tempted to talk to DOT when they were here, but I knew they had to go to another
Oh,
meeting.
they would have, it would be a
But I
different.
think that it's
yeah,
a DOT discussion. I think it might be a John Cash and John Boldry.
Maybe.
discussion
Well, we've
point.
got to find the right division of DOT, because those signs that are on the highways that say McDonald's.
Yeah, you gotta pay for
You
those.
would not believe how much those
I
cost.
do,
When-
but-
20 years ago, when I heard what they cost, I said, I got to get into the sign business.
I-
This is
I-
unbelievable.
I feel fairly confident saying that they're going to make somebody else pay for it. I don't know if
Oh, yeah.
maybe the state historic preservation folks might have grant money for things like that.
Yeah.
But I don't think the funding's going to come from DOT to do it.
No.
And as kind of a ballpark estimate, and this is a completely different matter, but when I was the garrison commander at Fort Bragg, we negotiated with DOT to name the new 295 extension that goes out from the Fort Bragg area out to 95, the Airborne and Special Operations Highway. And they accommodated us on that, didn't fight it either, but they did make us pay for the signage, and I think it was on the order of about $500 to $1,000 per sign to put those things up.
I'm telling you, we need to go into the sign business.
Yeah.
Well,
Unbelievable.
I mean, I'm just going to say it. I mean, the village of Pinehurst is not easy to find.
Well, it isn't
And I think we need all the help we can get.
true, but now that everybody uses their navigators and all that,
Still, to reinforce it. I mean, I think it's back to branding and marketing.
Yeah.
To put it in the mind of the passerby that there's something very special about where they're going.
I know I've been told that all those people that come down 220 or 73 and they're
Yeah.
going down to Myrtle Beach, if they saw a sign that said Pinehurst, they might say, oh, we don't need to go to Myrtle Beach. But see, I think those people already know that Pinehurst
I think
is
it's
here.
more of a long-term, multifaceted branding. But I think it's totally different than, I think that was probably a blue sign, the highway. The brown sign you have to qualify for.
Okay.
So understand, not everyone can get a brown sign. I mean,
Tullamore, is it the blue sign that Tullamore?
the blue sign is the one I think amenities pay for. So I think the brown sign program is historic in nature, and it
Yeah.
has to, you have to qualify, which makes it a different price point, which I still think you have to pay for the signs. But I think it'd be a good investment. I don't look at investments as costs. And, yeah, I look at investments as investments.
And the scenic highway signs, that would, if we could get Midland Road as a scenic highway, that would be.
Yes, I think all
it's
this
probably something we
discussion
have to
should
pay
be
for, too.
part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
But John, is it not something you and John Cashin could talk about?
But I think a first step, because talking directly with Brandon Jones likes the idea of providing signage for the Women's Exchange. He likes the idea of having Cav Peterson and others come down and talk to him a little bit about it with our support as well. He's willing to talk about where the sign should go and what kind of sign it should be. He's also said, I will be supportive if there's another state agency that we would have to connect with, that he would help open the door for us to think about that.
Cultural resources.
So I think that's the next step, is to just arrange a meeting with Brandon and go down to the Aberdeen office with Cav and someone else, and then someone from the village staff to say, okay, let's get on with it.
Good, like it.
Kevin, you also mentioned the notion of a different type of kind of village-centric wayfinding signs that were historic in nature.
No, I think that I'm just trying to deal with the fact that I know many people who live in Moore County that still gut check on how to get to the village. And
Really?
I don't think it, I don't know if I'm alone, that I think the wayfinding project you did was a good step. I don't think we're done. I guess is what
How
that's really
did-
all I'm saying.
Is that another aspect of the brown sign thing, apart from the DOT
Yeah,
interest, but are you
it's-
also,
It's a wayfinding, by definition, it's wayfinding,
Yeah.
but I think I was kind of having two discussions. I wanted to rethink, I don't think I think we take for granted when we live here, when you're a tourist, you leave the hotel, you don't even know there's a village down at the end of that path. I think we take a lot for granted, because we know where we're going. I know nobody that knows where they're going in Pinehurst, so.
Once we found it, yeah.
Yeah, so I think, I'm just saying, you guys did a great job on the first step of wayfinding. I don't think we're done with wayfinding. So I don't know but I do think the brown signs, if you considered them being in Aberdeen on the same post as the Seagrove Pottery sign, if you considered them all the locations of the Seagrove Pottery sign, there's existing post. I mean, I'm using them as a model right now.
That is a
Then off-
scenic highway. That's
And
the
then off.
Pottery Highway.
And then off Highway 5. People
705.
don't, the brown sign might stand out more than, these are beautiful wayfinding signs you guys established. What do you think be easier to see, that brown sign or I think the brown sign, you would see to turn to see the historic village of Pinehurst, or the Women's Exchange. So I'm just trying to not take for granted that people can find us. That's really where I'm at.
Okay.
Take it for granted, because I don't think I know people that live in
where
Moore
we're
County,
at, or where
where the village is.
certain things in our village are, like the Women's Exchange?
Yeah, like the Women's Day, I don't think the village, I'm talking specifically about the historic village center. I know that I might be a minority here at this table, but
You've
not
lived
many
here the
people know how to.
longest.
I live here long enough that I still know people that live in this community that, okay, you got to turn here, then you turn left there,
Kevin,
It's just-
I keep driving around until I find it. I mean,
People
I get
keep-
lost.
They get excited because they found it, and I just don't, I don't want to take that for granted. I'm a marketing guy, and I just think that I think we have to show up and tell people where we're at,
And at the same time, think of the proliferation of signage. Because at one time, we had a big issue with that. We had a lot of, there's going to be a stop sign, here's the stop sign, here's the warning, and it was just awful. We took down a lot of signs.
Right.
So.
But
we
I mean,
need to
I
be
would
very
look at the
careful.
shop.
Wayfinding initiative was to try to consolidate signage on
But I think part of what we're also talking about is
Yeah.
outside of Pinehurst, too.
Yeah,
So
outside,
that, you
yeah.
know,
But I would take the Shaw House as an example. They have a brown sign for the Shaw House in Southern Pines on Highway 1 to find the Shaw House. The Women's Exchange matches that model. But I don't want to talk about the Women's Exchange without talking about the historic village of Pinehurst.
Yeah.
I think that,
Historic
let's have two
cabins, or-
discussions.
Yeah.
I think there's two things that qualify as historic. Now, I don't know what the guidelines are. I want to make sure we do qualify, but that's kind of, hopefully I've explained myself. I don't want to take for granted that people can find the village of Pinehurst.
That's the first priority.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I can't figure out my GPS software because every time I plug in the Village of Pinehurst, it automatically takes me to the Drum and Quill.
Yeah,
Oh, my gosh.
nobody can find that place.
Holy moly.
But, and maybe it's historic Pinehurst too. Maybe there's three things. I'm not trying to prejudge anything. I'm just trying to get something out there and try to deal with the issue. And whatever the consensus of a bunch of smart people is fine with me. Yeah,
Make contact with the brown sign people.
yeah.
Brandon can help us? Brandon can help us. That is wonderful.
I think we have three candidates technically: the village and the resort and the Women's Exchange. But that's just me. I mean.
Right. Are there
So-
any more work session items?
yeah, I have one more topic, I'm sorry to
Okay.
say.
Okay.
And not at this work session, but maybe at our next work session, can we talk a little bit more about short-term rentals? Because I think the permitting idea is a good one. I had an experience meeting Andrea Correll for the first time, and we're working on the PDO, and so she came to learn that I worked at my home, and the next thing she gave me was an application to fill out because I had a business in my home, and that would be $50, please, to the Village
Home
of Pinehurst.
occupation, yeah.
So, you know, I think VRBOs kind of fit in that same kind of category, too.
Well, we have to remember that Mike Newman stood up here, I don't know how long ago, and he said there are three things you can do with your land, with your home. You can rent it, you can live in it, you can sell it. And in his email, he was very, very specific about it's going to be a fight, and he does not want our little village to be the one that starts this fight with the permitting business. He's not supportive of it, and he's our attorney.
But I think the point Judy was making was that permitting might be a good way to go to understand where we are. I thought permitting was a good idea as well, and I still might feel that way, but I shared some feedback with all of you right before we came to the meeting here today from Mike Newman. And if you read into there, read the details of what he provided, there's a Coates Cannon blog entry that is fairly recent that has some verbiage in it that suggests that permitting may not be legal as well. What's curious though is that blog doesn't seem to latch on to that, even though the language is included in there. It doesn't talk about it with enough detail to firmly come to that conclusion. But I guess what I'm saying is there might be a cautionary note out there that we need to look at it.
I think the best thing is to be sure we get the good advice of our village attorney.
I agree.
Because for whatever we'd like to do, there's only two things that I want Mike Newman to tell me. One is, tell me what you do and how do you keep us out of trouble. So that's why we pay him. So I kind of fall down on the side of Mike, tell us what the law is, interpret that for us, and then let us come to some sort of a decision.
I would suggest that if we started taking an inventory, there would be mayhem. The short-term rental folks would say, oh my God, what are they going to do next?
Well, I think it's easy to take that inventory. You just go on the website. I mean, we could probably do it in 35 minutes.
Okay, that's fine, but what are we going to do with the inventory?
Well, now you know where they are.
Are they all on those websites, though?
I think maybe ones at Sandhills Properties may or may not be.
Yeah.
But I bet they are, because they typically tend to advertise on the web. That's definitely, very well known and done. But I think the concern Kevin raised was, if you get a concentration of VRBOs, now you're really changing the character of the community. And that is something I think we also have to be concerned about it.
But if the owners of those properties are the ones that change the character of their neighborhood, what can you do? Not allow them according to,
Well, I think the first thing for me would be, what's the size of the elephant we're talking about here? How many short-term rentals are there? And if there's a way for us to gather that, I'd like
More
to know.
than you
I'd like to
think.
know what that
Just
is.
More
just
than
go,
you think.
Go to vrbo.com and put in Pinehurst, and you'll see they're from a historic district.
there are a lot.
I've never looked on Airbnb for whatever reason, but VRBO's got tons of them.
There are
Home
other,
away.
there are other
HomeAway-
website tools like that, though, that we would have to also investigate. I
Yeah,
think.
HomeAway,
Yeah.
Airbnb, and others I'm sure we don't even know about.
Well,
On the dark web, no, just kidding.
Dark web.
It's a very complicated subject. and
Very
I don't think
complicated.
it's anything to rush into, and but level playing field is a good starting point.
Yeah, I mean, hospitality is part of our biggest thing we're here about.
yeah.
And these VRBOs are playing into that. I just think when you have a concentration or, during the campaign, I heard all about the mariachi bands all over the place.
Right.
And, there's a quality of life that goes with some, that we have to try and help figure out how people can moderate and how we can make it work for all of our citizens.
Outlaw mariachi bands.
I think it's a healthy discussion. I just don't, I just think that, I'm trying to articulate it right. I don't think we could hold a U.S. Open or a U.S. Kids without home rentals.
exactly.
I don't think we could be a welcoming tourist. When I was a kid, every house was a rental house in the village, so just to put it in perspective, they're all rental houses when I was a kid. And I think level playing field, all sides should agree to that.
Yeah.
But I think it should be positive, what we do. Fairness is punitiveness, don't want to be a part of, but fairness, I want to be a part of.
I think that's really, I think the more, sort of take it out of the closet to some extent, because people are, doing it. I mean, it's a way of life here, perhaps.
And I told you guys, I'm renting 2 houses
I
this
know,
fall.
I saw that.
So, I mean, I'm part of the problem, I think,
I don't think so.
We'll
If
send
you
the police
become-
over.
If you
from
become
my
a
guess.
problem, the
Yeah,
police will
yeah.
come over.
So I just.
Mariachi band
yeah.
over. We'll send a mariachi band over to you.
I'm passionate about that issue she brings up about, it's the events usually at the rental houses. It's not rental houses, it's people parking on azaleas, if you think about the problems we're having, they're not the problems that I'm reading about in other cities with rental houses.
That's
So our
true.
problems, I take them really seriously. They're some of my neighbors, and I want to figure out how to deal with them, but I don't think it's reached, I think we're ahead of it, I guess. I think it's just talking about it is good. I think we're ahead of it, and I think we're too far ahead of it. I'm worried that, we're getting ahead, it's really a state, county issue in a lot of ways, and I'm
Well,
worried.
it's like crime, we want to stay ahead of keeping
Yeah.
crime away. We want to stay ahead
Right.
of keeping this to be a
And I think it does come into that,
charming
police.
part of our town.
Police are called for nuisance calls, so I think it plays into that. But I think that overwhelmingly, we have good renters of houses here, that I think we have good people, so I don't think that's the case everywhere. When I'm reading about the issue,
Right.
I think
New
we're,
York City and other
you know,
places.
I think we're, so, I just want to, I want to talk to Mike Newman. I agree with going through Mike, and I agree with the level playing field too, so I'm kind of walking a crooked line.
I think we probably need to address the community, and maybe through in the different neighborhoods. I don't know if this is a neighborhood advisory committee session, but the Lake District area is the one that's raised the issue most recently about problems down there. So just like not knowing the number of rental properties, don't understand the degree of interest within the different neighborhoods.
I'd say I heard about it uniformly in different neighborhoods during the campaign. I heard about it in the village, very loud. Heard about it at number 6 and Village
Number
Acres.
6?
You know, I'm so conflicted. I wonder how much being able to rent a house doesn't increase real estate values in some respect. Because
That's
they're all of a
true.
sudden, I just think we should tread really softly. I think it's a much more complex issue. Don't think we shouldn't talk about it, but I think I'm really think there's a lot of, it's an iceberg with a lot of stuff underneath the water. And I respect our, you know, got to respect your attorney on this process.
You have to respect
State statute,
private property
state
rights
statute
as
you
well.
have to respect, you know, and,
Right.
but, you know, I love talking about it. So I'm not trying to not talk about it, but I don't think we're ready to
Do anything
forward.
about it.
I think it's a, you know, what I know about the subject, I think the state should be leading this, and there's nothing wrong with us prodding them to lead it, but I just do. But that's just an opinion, you know, and I think I'll have more behind that opinion in a few months.
I think there's a lot of truth to that, Kevin. I mean, the biggest reason we're in this big gray area is because the actual state statutes don't clarify it for us. And there is an opportunity for the General Assembly to tackle that if they feel so inclined, to try to clarify what powers we have with regard to short-term rentals.
And I think that, you know, we know our people in the state, you know, we talk to them, and I serve on the Restaurant Association Board, which is also the Lodging Association. They pair it up. So I think I just, as long as we're about, I almost feel like legitimize it helps the rental economy. And that's how I want to position things. I think that our future is tied to it. So I think I don't think there should be anything punitive. I mean, that's just my opinion. I mean, you know.
In a way, I think we should let sleeping dogs lie. Yes, some people complain about it, but if your neighbor is a rental and they're making noise, after 10 o'clock, you call the police. It's as simple as that. Now, some people have said, I'm afraid to call the police. Well, then pull up your big girl pants and call the police.
Right.
Or call some big neighbor of yours and have him call the police.
Be good to have that data, you know, from the
Yes,
chief.
that's what I tried to stress to people. If they don't call the police, then we have no track record. We have no evidence. of
Absolutely.
the
There
bad
were some
boys.
houses out at Lake Pinehurst that they swore it was awful. It was like every weekend. The police data showed that they had made 2 calls in like 5 years.
Right.
So you can't really, establish that there's a pattern of a problem. I think I'm losing my voice. John and I met at 3:45 with the League of Women
Yeah.
Voters to give them a little. So if there's nothing else, can we entertain a motion to adjourn?
Can I?
Moved.
Yes, you may.
I just wanted to remind you all, before you leave tonight, that we have on the calendar the budget work sessions the week 14 through 18 May.
May,
And if
yes,
you could please try to keep that blocked out.
right.
It's not likely we're going to need all 5 of those days. Matter of
asked
fact, we'll probably
Natalie.
we'll
Asked
probably
Natalie
be
a
able to
while
get through it in a
ago.
couple of days, but
Yep. 14th through 18th of May, just.
Well, you're not going to need them all, but you're going to need 2 of them.
Lauren, do you recall the times of those meetings? It's negotiable, so. I think we did them at the normal time last time because we had Clark and Claire that were working, right? So,
You want to send out an Evite? Yeah,
Yeah.
send us an Evite.
that's all I had.
Yep, okay, blocked out. Okay, thank you, everyone. Did we adjourn yet? No? Okay. Movement, okay, we're all adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're leaving. Thank you.